It's been an eventful year for WWE outside of the ring as much as in it. But amongst all of the women's revolutions, plans for global localization, and worldwide geopolitical scandals, there were some great wrestling matches as well. It's important to remember, after all, that wrestling is very much a part of wrestling. We've seen epic no-DQ brawls, chaotic multi-man scrambles, and massive moments on the grandest stage of all. Now it's time to look at the best of the best, including a few honorable mentions. Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair at Survivor Series, Seth Rollins versus The Miz at Backlash, Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor on the 30th of April episode of Raw, AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura at Money in the Bank, the Women's Royal Rumble, Buddy Murphy versus Cedric Alexander at Super Showdown, and Asuka versus Becky Lynch versus Charlotte Flair in a TLC match at TLC. Without further ado, I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are the 10 best WWE matches of 2018. Join us! Number 10, the Men's Royal Rumble. The 2018 Men's Royal Rumble match may have been relegated from the main event spot of the pay-per-view in favour of the debuting Women's Rumble match, but that didn't stop it from being one of the best 30-man Royal Rumbles ever. From the very first minute when Rusev was announced as entrant number 1, the crowd was red hot for a match that would have bits of everything. For the undercard guys, this match had stories for the likes of Heath Slater, who struggled to make it to the ring for several entrants before being tossed in by Sheamus. The punchline to the running gag being Slater eliminating Sheamus in near record time. In the mid-card, Finn Balor was made to look like a legitimate star, lasting from the number 1 spot until the last 4, and eliminating the returning Rey Mysterio along the way. While in the main event spots, the final 6 saw a showdown between 2 generations. Mysterio, Cena, and Orton on one side of the ring, Reigns, Balor, and Nakamura on the other. And then a final 3 of Cena, Reigns, and Nakamura. To the Philly crowd's delight, and to the delight of each of us at home, the WWE didn't take the easy route of giving Reigns the victory to set up his inevitable match with Brock Lesnar, and instead went with Nakamura, who eliminated both Reigns and Cena to win what was a beautifully orchestrated Royal Rumble match. Number 9, the 6-pack challenge for the WWE title at Fastlane. Another match featuring more than your traditional 2 to 4 competitors that makes it onto our list is the Fastlane 6-pack challenge WWE title match SmackDown offered to us back in March. Headlined by WWE champion AJ Styles needing to overcome all the odds to set up a huge WrestleMania title match with dream opponent Shinsuke Nakamura, this match, which also features some of the best in-ring talent in the land, namely John Cena, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Dolph Ziggler, was bell-to-bell carnage for nearly 22 minutes at the conclusion of this WrestleMania go-home pay-per-view. Oh, and Baron Corbin was also in the match. I didn't quite think he deserved the best in-ring talent in the land moniker. Well, not yet anyway, Baron. I've got your back. Everything about the way this match was presented just reeked of that big match feel. Cena even hit successive AAs on everyone in the match from the moment the bell rang, leaving only he and AJ Styles in the ring to play off their epic rivalry from the year prior. It was Cena and AJ's rivalry that would bullet point the action, bringing moments of investment from the audience between hectic sequences and exciting spots. Spots that included Baron Corbin charging Ziggler through some plexiglass in the crowd, Cena hitting an AA on Styles through an announce table, and Kevin Owens accidentally superkicking Shane McMahon, who was ringside for some reason, into the barricade. And with a flurry of offense finishing the match, this particular match of the year entry left everyone with a smile on their face. AJ Styles crucially still the WWE champion ahead of that proposed dream match. Number 8, Mustafa Ali versus Buddy Murphy on the 3rd of July episode of 205 Live. Just ahead of WrestleMania, it was said that TRIPLEH had taken the reins of 205 Live following Vince McMahon's decision that it was no longer worth his time following a string of recently released brand main eventers and a slew of worsening ratings on the WWE network. But it wasn't until Buddy Murphy versus Mustafa Ali at the beginning of July that the world would come to notice. Building off an intense feud between the two, this epic encounter was precisely the brand-defining match that 205 Live needed to have. It was fast, risky, didn't put a foot out of place from a technical standpoint, and looked and felt like a true independent wrestling match in the best possible way. If you had tuned out of WWE main roster matches because they all look and feel the same, this was the antidote. Much like Murphy's match with Cedric Alexander at Super Showdown, this match was fought at a frenetic pace. Murphy's explosive strength and Ali's stamina and grace made for an excellent recipe for a wrestling match that just went and went and went and went and went with seemingly no letting up. The pair wrestled a few matches in 2018 that were all worthy of top 10 consideration, evidence of their immense in-ring chemistry. But it was this match at the beginning of July that won its spot here. The no DQ stipulation lending itself to the most creative stare spots we've likely ever seen on WWE TV, and one of the sweetest looking Spanish flies from the barricade onto the announce table. Ali would come out on top in this one, but it was less about the individuals in this one and more about the brand itself. A brand being redefined by a quicker, more impactful style of wrestling we'd usually only ever see in WWE on NXT. Number 7, Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre versus Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose for the Raw Tag titles at Hell in a Cell. Marking the first pay-per-view match that Dean Ambrose would take part in after his long-term injury, this tag team match at Hell in a Cell masterfully segmented different combinations of the 4 excellent wrestlers to build moments within the match that raised the excitement levels among everyone watching time and time again. Ziggler and Rollins were at the center of the match's most memorable sequences, a Falcon Arrow nearfall popping everyone, including Michael Cole on commentary, following a series of fast and hard-hitting moves, and the finish being one of the most creative and brilliant of any match on this list. With Ambrose on the outside, Rollins would hit the superplex portion of his Falcon Arrow spot, raising Ziggler for the follow-up move, only to be hit with the Claymore when he least expected it. Ziggler would crawl to the cover for the 1-2-3, and the two-man shield would be left waiting for a title victory. The returning Ambrose left to stew in what could have been had Rollins not been his partner that night. Number 6, the men's Money in the Bank ladder match at Money in the Bank. I've spoken of Carnage before in this list, but perhaps the most Carnage-filled men's match on the main WWE roster this year was the men's Money in the Bank ladder match at Money in the Bank in June. Main eventing the 10-match long main card was always going to be a tough ask, but Bobby Roode, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Kofi Kingston, Rusev, Samoa Joe, The Miz, and eventual winner Braun Strowman truly pulled out all the stops to not only maintain the energy of the live crowd, but also steal the entire damn show. Heading into the match, it seemed that more people than usual had a viable claim for the briefcase, with some even speculating that New Day member and just brilliant guy Kofi Kingston could be in a mega push as its new holder. But it was Braun Strowman who played the favourite in the match, his presence being the target for all of the other wrestlers on countless occasions, and his presence inevitably being too strong to overcome. Strowman unhooking the briefcase to usher in his Monster in the Bank phase. But this wasn't before he almost literally murdered Kevin Owens by throwing him off a 30-foot ladder through some tables near the stage, ouch, nor was it ahead of him literally battering clean through a ladder that Roode and Balor had tried to take him out with. In many ways, it was a Braun Strowman showcase, but it worked on almost every level. We were invested, the spots excited us, some even scared us, and we were glued to the screen bell to bell. Utter carnage that presented Braun at peak Braun. Number 5, Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle versus Stephanie McMahon and Triple H at WrestleMania. Perhaps the most surprising match to feature on our list this year is Ronda Rousey's debut WWE match and the show stealer of this year's WrestleMania. We've made no bones about our frustrations at WWE's presentation of Stephanie McMahon as a heel who never gets her comeuppance, but this match played off that with true skill, teasing Rousey's eventual capturing of the boss's daughter for much of the 20-minute runtime, interspersing the teasers of Stephanie's inevitable demise with some really good technical wrestling from Triple H and the returning Kurt Angle. The most memorable pieces of the action here was Ronda's surprising skill as a wrestler in general, and of course the moment she laid into a cowering Triple H with strikes against the turnbuckle. The creme de la creme and the icing on the cake was always going to be Rousey finally giving Stephanie what she deserved, however. And when that finally came, it was like every wrestling fan of the past decade had a Cheshire Cat grin on their face that would leave them with that ultimate happy feeling wrestling matches only sometimes deliver. Number 4, Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles for the WWE title at TLC. TLC brought us a late addition to this list, although we probably should have seen it coming ahead of time. AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan will be remembered as two of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and even when obeying the boundaries of WWE's main roster style, they still delivered a technical classic. Their clash on December 16th was a hotly anticipated rematch, with Bryan having screwed AJ out of the WWE title on SmackDown. This bout was longer and took a while to develop, beginning at a slower pace and moving up through the gears. Bryan deliberately tried to infuriate Styles with time wasting and taunts, but once the action picked up, there was no turning back. The finish was both abrupt and genius. Styles went for a phenomenal forearm, only for Bryan to duck it and attempt his running knee. AJ countered that with an inside cradle, but again the devious champion was one step ahead, reversing the hold and forcing Styles' shoulders to the canvas. It was a finish that made Bryan Bryan look fortunate and skilled, a difficult balance for heels to achieve, while Styles sold his frustration perfectly. The lesson here? Stick AJ and Bryan in a wrestling ring together, and it's probably going to turn out well. Number 3, the 7-man gauntlet match on the 19th February edition of Raw. A match that lasts over 2 hours on a modern-day episode of Monday Night Raw. You've got to be kidding me. This awesome gauntlet match that was dropped on us completely by surprise in mid-February was the birthplace of Monday Night ROLLINS, the Blackout artist outlasting match favourites Roman Reigns and John Cena respectively to go over an hour into the gauntlet match ahead of his elimination by Elias. This was one of those elimination matches that was booked simply perfectly. The order of opponents and the winners of each match being the correct person each time. Rollins eliminated Reigns, then Cena. Elias eliminated Rollins before being eliminated by Finn Balor. Miz eliminated Balor and then turned around into the oncoming Strowman. Say it with me, kids. Braun! Braun Strowman would be victorious in what Michael Cole tagged as the longest match in WWE history, and the viewing numbers seem to prove that it was a success with fans. It was the best Raw match of the current brand split era, and one of the best and most memorable TV matches in WWE history. Number 2, Daniel Bryan vs Brock Lesnar, champion versus champion at Survivor Series. When Survivor Series was shaken up again, the prospect of a newly healed WWE champion Daniel Bryan facing Brock Lesnar after years of Bryan hyping the potential of the encounter was massive. When the pair were put into the main event spot on the pay-per-view and Bryan made that self-assured entrance, complete with Animal Walk, this match suddenly felt like the sort of main event we'd been missing for much of autumn. It was a big fight feel and everyone was on the edge of their seats immediately. The match itself went by the typical Lesnar formula in the middle, with the Beast suplexing the WWE Champion for fun, something that didn't feel so boring when taking into account Bryan's history of concussion issues and the concern that was therefore attached to every impact. But it was either side of that section of the match that Bryan excelled most. Opening the bout with a cocky and arrogant Bryan almost literally running rings around the larger Brock Lesnar was a stroke of genius. But it was Bryan's underdog comeback that made for a modern Survivor Series main event classic. Having endured the punishment of the Beast, Bryan worked Lesnar's strength against him to turn the tides of the match and chop down the bigger man to his own size. What truly sent the match over the top was how the pair had us believing that Lesnar might actually tap out to Bryan's yes lock, even with a return to the UFC on the horizon. The logical among us knew it would never happen, but for a brief moment it seemed like it was going to happen. And that was the genius of what these two men delivered. They made us believe. Number 1, Becky Lynch vs Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's title in a last woman standing match at Evolution. This was the ultimate blow-off match to a red-hot feud, and it had all the levels of brutality you'd expect from a last man standing match, but with all of the boredom we saw in those endless John Cena versions of the match from the 2000s cut out. The use of weapons was creative and not bolted into the formula of the match as can often be the case, with Charlotte locking Becky in the figure 8 between the rungs of a ladder at one stage, the act presenting both wrestlers as having a battle of wills as much as a physical battle itself. With the crowd hotly invested in both women, the atmosphere was intense for what should have been the main event of the evening. The action itself undoubtedly stealing the show, courtesy of its mix of intensity and high-impact spots. Spots that included a brawl in the crowd, Charlotte crushing Becky through a table, Charlotte rising from under a pile of announce chairs, and the climactic powerbomb from the ring apron through a table at ringside. And to top it all off, the correct winner, Becky Lynch. So that's our list. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and you can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.